Hello, everypony, and welcome to the finale. It's been about 6-7 months since we began this, and we finally have reached the end of this long, and fun journey. And I would just like to thank each and every one of you for being so patient. You guys are really awesome, and I honestly couldn't have better subscribers. So, with that being said, I am just going to jump right in on this. Well, actually, hold on. There's one thing that I need to say first, and that is how this reading is going to work is first it's the alternate ending, then the real ending, then the first part of the prologue, and then the second part of the prologue. So it's 4 chapters. The 2 different endings are pretty much exactly the same for a good chunk of it, so rather than just reread a whole bunch, I'm just going to, read a few lines before it's to where it changes. So first it'll be the alternate ending than the actual ending, because the epilogues have to do with the actual ending, and so it's better if they're right next to each other. Plus, it's the order in which the author has it. So, anyway, let's get going on this. Operation Sunlight, alternate evil version. The day after the second coronation of Twilight Sparkle started off like any other day in the mountain range. A blowing blizzard outside, frigid air, and 4 dead guards in the tundra. Their bodies left outside to remind anyone who would think of doing anything silly what their end would look like. Well, it was normal in most ways. Within the royal bedroom, the air was nice and quiet. Twilight and Sombra slept within each other's hooves, the lingering pleasure of last night lingering in place. Occasionally, she would unconsciously cuddle her face into his neck, but otherwise, they didn't do much. Sombra's ear twitched back and forth, as the faint sunlight trickled from the windows into the room. He opened his eyes, and perceived that it was some time after dusk. Knowing that it was almost time to get up, he sighed and looked down at his queen. She was still sleeping, and he decided to give her a few more moments' rest before he woke her up. The first thing he was thinking about was how badly he wanted to do things with her as soon as possible. It had been far too long since the last time he got to experience that kind of action, and she was the perfect pony to do it with. He rested his head on her mane, hoping a guard wouldn't come in to disturb their rest, but it wasn't long until her ears were twitching as well.
What happened?
She stirred. He pulled his hooves away, and Twilight slowly came back to life. She rubbed her hooves on her forehead, and sat upright in bed. When she realized that he was still with her, she smiled and leaned her head on his shoulder.
"Good morning, my queen,"
he greeted.
"Did you enjoy our time together last night?"
You have no idea,
she answered.
That was one of the best nights of my life. And not just because we did the you-know-what. I mean the wedding and the coronation ceremony, too. Did you know that you're the first pony that's ever tried to go out with me?
I did not know that. If I remember right, Celestia was consistently given offers for her hoof in marriage, partly because the idea of being the first prince in Equestria was always going to be tempting.
I was only princess for a few days when you came to the Wispy Woods, remember? When you tried to take me back to the Crystal Empire? I wasn't even considered for the role until it was all over. Close, but not yet.
Do you think we could avoid talking about that period of time? I don't want to be reminded of that part of my life. I'm sure you understand.
Twilight blushed in embarrassment.
Oh, yeah, that.
She used her magic to pull the covers off her body, and she stretched her limbs in front of her. Sombra did the same, and got out of bed shortly after. He yawned and slapped his face to bring the feeling back into it. Twilight joined him out of bed, and they shared a kiss together. And then another. And then another. Eventually, she found his hooves around her neck.
So what do we do now?
She asked.
I'm not sure how you do things around here just yet. We don't have a kingdom to rule over. At least, not in comparison to Celestia's.
You said last night that you wanted to do it again,
he mentioned.
Well, we could always share a shower together.
You can do that? I mean, of course you could, but I've never heard...
He interrupted her with a hoof to the mouth.
Yes, ponies have been doing it as long as there's been a shower, but do you want to do it?
She nodded enthusiastically.
More than anything right now.
Meanwhile, in another part of Equestria, it was around the same time in the morning, but much warmer and almost humid. It was practically a jungle out there. The trees were as high as skyscrapers, and the ground moist and mushy to the touch. Monkeys chanted as they swung around the vines, and jaguars stalked their prey in the shadows. It was a perfect setting for a daring-do book. Off in the distance was the same mountain range Sombra called home. It stood in contrast to the hot, humid jungle bordering it. There were a few dozen tents in the midst of the jungle, all bearing either the emblem of Celestia or Luna. The ones carrying Celestia's son had the royal guards resting inside, while Luna's stallions were all bat ponies. A few of them watched out for any wildlife on their patrol, while the rest were attending a meeting with the sisters. They set up a few boxes around and arranged them into a large square shape. There, they laid out a giant map that went over that corner of Equestria in great detail. The mountain range was listed there from top to bottom. A red pencil was levitated off the ground with a yellow aura, and it drew a gigantic circle within a certain section of the mountain range.
"This is where the castle is located at, according to our sources," Celestia stated. "It's in the middle of nowhere, hence why it took almost an entire day of thorough searching to find it. And there is a small army of guards inside to complement Sombra's power," Luna added. "After debating our options, it would be wise of you, our guards tried and true, to focus your efforts chiefly on the guards. Celestia and I will deal with King Sombra ourselves."
"Forgive me for questioning your wisdom, but what about Twilight Sparkle?" Captain Silverstar brought up. "We know that she is working with Sombra. If she was willing to aid him in the deaths of 4 stallions, surely she would not hold it above her to attack you."
"That might be true, but our priority is to rescue her from Sombra's influence in any way possible," Celestia answered. "I have to believe that my beloved student is still there underneath his clutches, and I know that I'm going to snap her out of it."
Luna's brow lowered upon hearing the plan.
"Sister, could I have a moment with you?" "As you wish, sister."
Luna brought her over to a corner of the jungle where no pony would hear them. The noise of mosquitoes filled their ears, buzzing about and looking for blood to drain. Even though the Princess of the Moon was smarter than possibly Celestia herself, Celestia couldn't help but wonder if this private conversation should even be happening. She had it all under control and had it planned to the last letter. Or so she thought. Or hoped. Maybe a bit of both. When they were alone, Celestia could sense some doubt and concern radiating in Luna's eyes. She appeared as if she was a few inches from breaking down in front of the Princess of the Sun.
"What is this plan of yours?"
Luna questioned at last.
"You're not telling me your true intentions over this meeting," Celestia pointed out immediately. "Go on and say what you really feel about this." "Very well, then. If you want me to address you bluntly, so be it."
She stomped her hoof on the ground, bracing herself for what she was about to say.
"How do you plan to save Twilight? You know that Sombra will never let her go by choice. He would rather die fighting with her by his side than let her go back to you and live the rest of his life in a prison cell. And where would you start? By asking her politely that she goes back to being good? Using your relationship with her is not going to work. I'm your sister, and there was no convincing me not to have eternal night. It took brute force to subdue Nightmare Moon, and you know it."
Celestia sighed and looked up at the canopy above her head.
"Truth be told, I'm not sure if it will work, but I realized a long time ago that I cannot use emotion to save her. He must have used the same thing. However, I do have one idea that could work." "Could work? We cannot leave anything to chance when it is Sombra we're dealing with. He will consume us if he sees a window of opportunity." "I am prepared to do anything to save Equestria. You know that. But if he has used logic to lure her over, we will show her how it's all a lie." "What do you mean?" "I can use the story of Starswirl the Bearded to draw parallels with her story. Prove to her that he will only use her, but dispose of her when he is finished. How he only sees her as a pawn that he can live without." "This better work. I'd hate for you to lose her." "We will all lose if she is forever lost to the shadows. But you focus on stopping him however you can. I'll take care of Twilight." "Very well. Then there is nothing more to discuss."
They left their private corner of the jungle and returned to the campsite. The guards moved out of the way to have a clear path to the center of the area, where the map was laid out. While they were gone, the guards were debating within their ranks why the princesses left in the middle of a meeting. Perhaps the pressure of possibly facing Princess Twilight was proving to be too much for Celestia, but it didn't matter anymore. The speculation was about to end.
We will travel to the mountain range in 30 minutes' time, Celestia stated. There is a time window of 3 hours where the conditions around the mountains aren't as treacherous, and it starts at 1 in the afternoon. When this time arrives, we will storm the castle and deal with Sombra's forces. Is that understood?
Yes, Your Majesty,
they said together.
Well done, Luna complimented. I believe we are ready for Operation Sunlight.
The wood in the fireplace cackled as the fire burned it away. Its embers lit up the dining hall without the need of any sunlight. It felt warm and cozy in there, very inviting and serving as the perfect conditions for having a good lunchtime meal. The meal consisted of plain daffodil sandwiches this round. After all, they had to save themselves for dinner later that night. Twilight and Sombra were clad once more in their royal clothes as they ate. They had to be recognized as King Sombra and Queen Twilight Sparkle by now. They were seated next to each other at the dining table. There weren't many words exchanged between them for a while, as they were still busy recovering from the hottest shower that Twilight ever had. But something was bugging her. It was something that was troubling her mind ever since the shower was over.
What happens now?
She asked.
What do you mean?
Sombra asked in response.
I'm afraid I don't understand.
You have something in mind with me, and there's a reason you made me your wife and your queen. You want to rebuild your empire again, don't you?
Ah, clever. That is part of the plan, and I'm free to answer any questions you have about it.
How big is the empire going to be?
Sombra smiled and kissed her cheek.
As big as we want it to be. It could be bigger than Celestia's empire at its peak if we wanted to.
But she would never stand for that. You know it.
Another part of the plan. Now that we realized that Celestia wants both of us dead, the time will come when we will need to do something about it.
Is this going where I think it's going?
How about you tell me?
We're going to fight Celestia one of these days.
What's the matter? Don't you want to live in a world where you never have to wonder if she's going to break into the castle and see your death? That's what she wants to do, and you know it in your heart. I want to save you from that world.
I understand, but I don't want her chasing me like this. She has to realize that I want to be left alone with you. I don't need her in my life anymore. I only need you.
At that moment, Sombra brought his lips to Twilight's and kissed them passionately. He could hear her moan past the kiss, as she didn't want this moment to end. It was so perfect. She was beginning to let Celestia go from her heart. She broke away from the embrace, and met his glance with her own. Her eyes were green again, purple mist coming out like smoke from a chimney. He was much the same, and he looked down to her belly. What was to come would make things sweeter than they already were.
So how do we help the empire grow?
We use the creation spell together. Create an army numbering in the 100,000s. That will be enough to take over any city with any sort of defense.
Perfect! And I can organize the units together as well. Some of them will be nothing but flyers, and others could be a magical guard. That way, we can mix it up and they'll never be able to make a good strategy to stop us.
Exactly. Our enemies can be clever with their tactics, and they will have resources we don't have. Even the Griffins will beat us in some cases.
But they don't have dark magic like we do.
Twilight grinned.
And so the corruption is complete.
He thought to himself.
No, they don't. And that will be the key to winning our battles.
But we have to expand to a point where Celestia and Luna won't be a problem.
That will have to wait for a while. Those sisters are powerful and very creative in their plans. That much I know from first-hand experience. We'll have to spend years before we can match them.
At least we'll live forever. We have all the time we could ever ask for. But there's something we have to talk about if this plan is going to happen.
What is that, my queen?
How do you do that creation spell you've been using? I've never seen anything like it before, and I want to know how to do it, so I can help you create this army myself.
It is not as difficult as you would believe. If you follow me back to the target range, I can show you everything there is to it. It will take just half an hour to learn, and the only trick is finding out how to learn it.
Then show me.
True to Celestia's word, the mountain range was much more bearable at 1 in the afternoon. Anyone could look around the tundra as far as the eye could see, or as much as the mountains would allow. The temperature was just above freezing, but the ground was so cold that none of the snow would melt, still too cold for flying for most Pegasi. In the path leading to Sombra's castle, hundreds of hoofprints were left behind in the snow.
They ranged from the small to the big to the kind of print that only alicorns made.
Keep an eye out for the castle, Silverstar commanded. As soon as you see it, give the signal.
Celestia and Luna stood out in front of the force of guards, taking their charge in their advancement. Their faces were stern, and they kept their eyes forward to their objective. Despite their advanced intel, they had been walking through the area for a whole hour and saw nothing of a black castle. It didn't help that their window of opportunity was very limited, and the guards would most likely die from frostbite if they didn't hurry their flanks along.
Are you sure that this is the right location?
Asked Luna.
I'm sure of it. That guard was still traumatized from last night when we left this morning. He wouldn't forget it as long as he lived.
And so they marched forward to the objective, regardless of the doubts creeping into the minds of some of the guards and even one princess. It appeared as if there were endless miles of snow to trudge through with no end in sight. With the sun out in full force, some of the guards were even getting sweaty. Celestia and Luna kicked up snow with every hoof step they made. Some of it landed on their bodies, and even they would admit that it was getting rather cold out here. But it didn't matter to Celestia. It was time to put this issue behind once and for all.
I see something ahead of us,
said one stallion.
Go and find out what it is,
Celestia commanded. A Pegasus guard went out and flew over to the mold coming out of the ground. To most of them, it just looked like a pile of snow. It would make sense, as it was white and seemingly formless. He approached the object and sniffed around it. The smell was atrocious, and he gagged at the scent of it. So he took a few steps back and wiped the snow off it with his wings, keeping a good distance away from it. It was the body of a fallen soldier. The reason why the scent was so terrible was because the flesh was starting to rot. Some pony had done it on purpose. The body was fresh and it was cold outside, which would have otherwise preserved the flesh. Some pony forced it to start rotting ahead of time. And then he noticed another mold out in the snow. He shook the snow off the object to find another body. Then another mold revealed yet another body. When it was all done, he had found 4 bodies to 4 royal guards. The stench was so bad that he had to cover up his mouth to stop himself from throwing up.
Those must be the guards Sombra killed last night,
Luna noted.
But why would he do something like this with them?
It is a warning to any intruders, Celestia figured out,
acting as a sign to turn back. If this is where we found the bodies, we must be getting close. We'll take the bodies with us to base on the way back. They deserve a good funeral in Canterlot.
The unit forced themselves to march past the bodies. Not one guard was able to pass by without seeing the faces of the fallen, forever twisted in a state of horror. Celestia forced her cold hooves to press further along. She could feel how close they were getting. She couldn't give up at this moment. And then, her heart skipped a beat when she finally saw it. There it was, with the flags featuring Sombra's likeness over every one of them. Stones as black as his mane, and crystals embedded into every part of the castle that one could see on the outside. They had found Sombra's castle at long last. She forced herself to stop and take a deep breath. Sombra was going to be inside that castle with Twilight Sparkle, and unless Celestia took the right approach, she would have to deal with the death of another talented unicorn.
You know what to do. Every pony knows what to do. Luna will be with you. You can win this fight and bring back Twilight as well. You are one of the wisest ponies that's ever lived, and you know how to get some pony's heart. That's what you need to do with her. Don't let your emotions get in the way. She's not lost in her mind just yet. You have time to make this right. So make it right.
While her eyes were closed as she was meditating on her next move, she felt a hoof touch her shoulder. She would know that hoof from anywhere with its white sandal covering it. Luna was doing her best to comfort her before the battle. She smiled weakly and nodded.
We will bring her home today,
Luna comforted.
Trust me when I say this.
Thank you, Luna, said Celestia.
Sometimes I wonder how I survived 1,000 years without you by my side.
Finally having the courage to begin, she turned around to face her unit. She exhaled and sent steam everywhere, and she addressed her unit as a whole.
Gentle colts, it is no secret that this might be the most challenging battle you'll ever face in your lifetimes. King Sombra is not just a brute, but one of the most clever foes I've ever had to face in my long rule. He will have tactics at his disposal designed to bring you to your knees. But today, I am with you in battle. I trust this fight in your hooves, for I have picked every last one of you to fight under my name. I picked you all because you are brave, you are tough, and you have never backed down from the face of danger. So I ask you to put your courage to the test once more for me, for Princess Twilight Sparkle, who I count on you to aid me in her rescue, and for all of Equestria.
— Begin Operation Sunlight at once. Prepare for battle. The throne room lay dormant for the time being. Not one pony made a noise, not even the 2 ponies on the throne. It was some time after Twilight had learned the creation spell, and regardless of if she showed it or not, it was difficult to master, and she needed a moment to rest on her new throne. The Shadow Guards went on their way and patrolled the halls surrounding the room, occasionally checking up on the king and queen. All in all, it seemed peaceful in this part of the castle. Seeing that there was plenty of time before they had to do anything else, Sombra leaned over and brought his snout to Twilight's ear.
We could always go to the library if you were not entertained by the majesty of this place,
He offered.
Just give me a moment.
Twilight responded.
I think we're just fine out here.
All of a sudden, the Shadow Guards rushed into the front of the castle. The stomping of hooves broke up any tranquility that was there before.
What is the meaning of this?
Sombra questioned. He rose up from his throne and looked all around him.
Is there another intruder out there?
I wouldn't be surprised,
said Twilight.
The guard that got away probably told Celestia we're here, and she doesn't like letting things go like that.
I sincerely hope you're wrong about that. We lost too many guards the last time to hold a second invasion back without personal intervention. We need to get out there ourselves.
Twilight nodded and got off her seat. They galloped to the door leading out of the throne room, and prepared for a battle themselves. But before they could get out of the room, the doors were struck by a spell stronger than most spells either one of them usually saw. The wood panels flew up into the air and landed behind the king and queen. They hit the floor with such impact that splinters flew everywhere in their wake. Twilight's horn beamed to prepare herself to kill more guards as necessary, but she stopped when she realized who the ponies coming in were. These 2 ponies were taller than even the bulkiest stallion. Their manes and tails flew with the power of the celestial skies, one with the sun and all its glory, and the other with the stars of the moonlit sky. They carried around regal attire in the form of golden sandals on their hooves, a neckplate, and a crown that told every pony how high up the totem pole they were. One was white as paper, and the other was dark blue like the ocean at night. They were Princess Celestia and Princess Luna. The Celestial Sisters charged into the throne room, ready for anything that was waiting for them, but they stopped in their tracks immediately after seeing Twilight Sparkle there. Twilight Sparkle, I have finally found you, Celestia said gratefully. And you're... She noticed the different kind of attire Twilight was wearing. What is the meaning of this? Why are you dressed like your Sombra's queen?
Because I am his queen,
Twilight said without remorse.
I married him yesterday, in fact. But what are you doing here?
Upon hearing this, Luna turned her attention to Sombra. He gave them the nastiest grin either one of them had ever seen. She stomped on the ground and was ready to tear him apart. You foul beast! Luna snorted. We had long suspected that you might have corrupted dear Twilight, but to go so far as to make her love you, you are far worse than Discord and Queen Chrysalis combined.
What do you mean, make her love me?
Sombra shot back.
She chose to love me. Isn't that right, Twilight?
He came over and nuzzled Twilight on her neck. She did the same, but all the while looking to Celestia. Her expression was as much out of terror as it was for the love of her husband.
I love him,
she finally admitted.
I love him, no matter what you say about the kind of pony he is.
Do you not even know what you're saying anymore? Celestia growled. Or has he corrupted your brain so much that you can't listen to logic anymore?
But he's changed! He went to dinner with Cadence and treated her with respect. Gave me shelter when I needed to hide after that time in the gardens. He gave me that book by Starscroll.
You mean this book? Celestia brought the book on dark magic out in her possession. She tossed it to land in front of Twilight's hooves.
That's the book.
It is the same book that Sombra used to corrupt Starswirl the Bearded, Luna roared. That mind of dark magic Starswirl wrote about is Sombra. Didn't you kill those 4 guards because the mind took over? Yes, but that couldn't be Sombra. But it is. He did the same thing with Starswirl the Bearded, taking over his mind to do horrible things, Celestia added. That must have been what he did to you. Isn't it, Sombra? Twilight turned to Sombra. Her eyes watered with tears.
Is it true, Sombra? Did you kill those ponies through me?
There was no choice in the matter for him. He had to come clean.
It was to show you that Celestia is a tyrant,
Sombra stated.
After all, when you found shelter with me, she tried to take you away and hold you guilty for those murders. You know that's what she would have done. That night, she didn't know that it was me that did it, but you.
You're right,
Twilight responded. Her eyes were glowing increasingly green, and her voice echoed with a force when she spoke.
You tried to bring me back to Canterlot, to try me for those murders.
I never wanted to try you for murder! Celestia shrieked in the royal Canterlot voice. I always knew there was something wrong with you that night. The way you tried to hide things from me, and how you ran away for your life. I just didn't have the foresight to know it was Sombra that played a part in it. I wanted to bring you back home safely. He was the one who planted the idea that I wanted to kill you. After hearing that, it was as if Twilight's world and everything she knew was gone again. Her jaw was flat on the floor, and she shook her head repeatedly.
No, it's not true. It's not true.
I'm sorry, but Sombra is the same stallion that tried to kill you in the Crystal Empire. This was all just part of a setup to make you his queen.
But I love Sombra. I love him.
Whatever love he had for you was a lie.
Please, no. I want both. I want him and you.
She sat down on the floor and pressed her hooves to her head. She heard the voices of 1,000 ponies, each saying something different. All of them were telling her that Celestia was the one lying to her, and she was starting to believe them as her eyes grew ever more green.
That is a lie in itself,
Sombra barked. He stood up to Celestia and brought his face inches from hers.
Yes, I deceived Twilight Sparkle in order to make her my queen. That was always part of the plan. But I truly love her. She is the most beautiful and smartest mare I've ever met. And when I married her and took her to the marriage bed, I spent all night showing her how much I cared for her in my heart.
You made love to her? Luna asked. You disgusting animal! We will rejoice in putting you down! And no matter how much you love her, that doesn't justify anything you've done to earn her love, Celestia added. You could have just loved her and took your time to reform, but your ambition to kill me was always the top priority. And now you must die.
No, not so soon.
All 3 ponies turned to see where the faint voice was coming from. When Celestia saw it, her heart broke in half. Twilight rose up from her position, and her eyes were completely green, not even pupils to carry around. The purple mist emitting from them turned into fumes of mist, and when she talked, it was not her own voice that came out of her mouth.
You do not understand the love Sombra and I have,
Queen Twilight Sparkle snapped.
We will be together forever, long after the skin of your rotting corpses are gone. For we are the new rulers of Equestria. You are only a relic from a time that has passed centuries ago. The Empire of the Sun and Moon must cease, and the Shadow Empire will take its place.
Sombra ran back to her side and joined her in facing Celestia and Luna together. Their purple mist combined to coat the entire room in a nasty purple shade, and the room darkened considerably. You corrupted Twilight! Celestia screamed. You turned her against me. I will make you die for your crimes myself.
No. You will be the pony who dies this day.
Sombra shot back. The air around that room cackled with electricity, as all 4 ponies prepared the most devastating spell they could cook up. Luna was busy preparing a spell that would create 1,000 bat ponies to attack only Sombra, but she quickly saw nothing but white around her. Twilight surprised her with a quick dark sphere spell. She flew up in the air before she hit the ground, and she could feel the bones in her hooves shaking from the force. How they did not break was beyond her, but before she could recover, she felt a gooey liquid go down her face. She was bleeding, and bleeding profusely. Celestia stopped in the middle of her spell and turned to see Luna bleeding from her horn and flanks. She ran to her sister's aid, but she was interrupted when she felt her hooves skid around on the floor. She gasped when she felt 2 sharp pains in her neck. While she was off guard, Sombra ran to her and buried his fangs into her skin. He drew blood from the impact, and it dripped down her fur. The princess tried to break free, but Sombra only chomped down harder to hold her in place, drinking her blood like a vampire. Desperate, she used her levitation spell to pick him up and throw him away. He yelled as he collided with his own throne on his backside. The stone making up the chair crumbled and buried him whole. Celestia grunted, and felt the area where he pierced her skin. The blood was still coming down from the attack, and it would hurt for some time. She then realized that Twilight was aiming another dark sphere spell for her sister. Luna was still trying to recover from the last spell, and she deployed a weak shield to protect her hide. Celestia didn't want to do this. Not to Twilight of all ponies, but she had no choice. She pointed her horn at the queen and shot a light beam attack. It collided with Twilight head-on and disrupted her spell entirely. Twilight cried out in pain as her whole body felt like it was burning from the heat of the sun. At first, it seemed like they had won the battle, regardless of their battle wounds. But then they saw something moving from the throne. Sombra threw the stones, burying him away with his magical grip, setting him free. He came face to face with them, with cuts big and large all around his body. He ran to Luna and shattered her shield by stabbing his horn into it. When she was defenseless, he rose up on his hind legs and prepared to attack her with a fire spell that would surely kill her. But Celestia butted in and crossed horns with him. He growled and tried to overpower the princess. Neither one of them was about to back down. The magic from their horns caused the whole room to glow in light and dark magic.
You want this to be the way you go out, your majesty?
Sombra taunted.
No, I want it written that I kicked your flank easily this day,
Celestia responded. They continued to cross horns, the magic illuminating with every attack. It seemed like no pony would win that easily. However, Luna finally recovered at that point. She wiped the blood off her face and rushed to join in the battle. Her horn collided with Sombra to force things to go in their favor. Twilight tried to recover, but she didn't have the strength to stand yet. Her body felt like it was on fire from the light spell, and it would take some time before she could fight again. Celestia and Luna working together was too much for Sombra. He tried to hold his own, but his hooves skidded backwards with time. He fell back on his flank, and he was dizzy as could be. He was completely hopeless now.
This ends now!
Luna shouted. The sisters brought their horns together, and the spell they created caused a whirlwind to consume the area. Every flag of Sombra's likeness was ripped apart from their posts, as the sphere that would destroy Sombra started to form. He couldn't stand at all. He watched the spell form before his eyes, and he knew that it was over for him. His rule wasn't going to last forever, but he wanted it to last longer than this. He shut his eyes, and prepared himself for the long journey waiting for him at the end of this.
Long live the king.
His vision ceased to be as the whirlwind spell slammed right into him. His life flashed before his eyes, and blood was shed everywhere and stained the stones in the room. The crown and cape were shredded into a million pieces, and his body finally came down to the ground. All signs of life were gone at last. Celestia still wasn't sure if he was dead or not. He might have had a card up his sleeve to prepare for this showdown, but before she could examine the body, Twilight rushed to his body in front of them. She bent down and pressed her face into his neck.
Sombra, it's me!
Twilight said.
Please wake up. They're still here. We need to fight them off if we're ever going to be together forever.
Yet the eyes did not open. She tried again and pushed on his belly.
Please wake up. You can't be dead yet. You're stronger than that.
No reaction. None.
No, don't leave me like this. We were going to have our own shadow empire. We were going to have our own child, raise him up as a prince.
She wept over his death, and buried her face into his shoulder joint. The sound of her crying ringed in the halls of the castle. The royal guards, now finished with dispatching Sombra's shadow guard, came over to hear what the commotion was about. To say that seeing Princess Twilight Sparkle crying over one of her deadliest enemies had confused them was an understatement. Celestia looked to Luna, both of them solemn in tone.
I believe his influence over her has finally passed,
Luna thought openly.
There's nothing to keep it in check.
Are you sure? Celestia questioned.
She was deep into his deception. But I know what you want to happen now.
Yes, I want her to be out of it for good. To have her back to Ponyville. I'll do whatever it takes to snap her out of his influence.
Then go and make it right.
Celestia nodded and slowly approached Twilight by her side, still mourning next to Sombra's body. The purple alicorn cried her heart out over what had happened, staining his fur that was also stained in his blood. The Princess of the Sun touched Twilight's shoulder with a hoof and tried to comfort her.
It will be all right. It's over. We can go back to Canterlot, and I will help you through this. I want to help you get through this, because I love you.
When Twilight pulled her head away and looked to Celestia, Celestia jumped back in sheer horror. The sight she witnessed was enough to send shivers down any pony's spine. Twilight's eyes weren't just green, but they were dark green. Fangs came down from her teeth, the same kind of fangs that were used to pierce Celestia's neck. The expression of her face was pure rage, the angriest she had ever seen any pony act. Her eyes narrowed down as she pressed her face on Celestia's.
You took him away from me,
she said coldly.
How could any pony love me when they take my stallion away from me?
She hovered above the ground and emitted a strong force of magic, perhaps stronger than anything that Celestia had ever seen Sombra do on his own. Then she roared at the top of her lungs, growling like an untamed animal.
You will die for everything you've done to me!
she continued.
And I will finish what King Sombra started and bring you to your knees.
In a matter of seconds, she created another magical sphere spell, twice as big as Sombra's spell on his best day, and launched it right at Celestia. Celestia screamed in agony, as the pain penetrated her from every angle. The lights in her eyes blinked rapidly for entire seconds, and her skin was charred from the force of Twilight's spell. Twilight held her former teacher in this position, aiming to continue to torture her until she was dead. All of the royal guards came in to confront this act, and prepared to hit the tyrant with everything they had. Luna stood out in front of the guards, enraged by what she saw. "Let her go!" Luna demanded. "Stop this nonsense! This isn't you!" At first, Twilight was prepared to end Celestia right there, but the force that would confront her over it was far too strong. This wasn't her time.
It is the new me you're talking to,
she responded.
I am Twilight Sparkle, the Queen of Shadows, and the one who will destroy everything you love and hold dear, but not this day. Your time will come in due time.
She released the spell, and Celestia fell to the floor battered and bloody. She couldn't even lift her head up at that moment, but she was still alive. Luna ran to her side and held her hooves in her own. "Do not worry about me," Celestia said. "Stop her at once. Sombra has permanently corrupted her, and there is no saving her." But when she was finished talking, Twilight had taken a shadow form of her own. The shadow wrapped itself around Sombra's body, and she disappeared in the midst of the shadows. "I'm not letting you get away!" The shadow moved out the front door and descended into the hallways of the castle. It was moving straight for the outdoors. "Stop her at once!" commanded Luna. Every single royal guard in the castle followed her as she galloped through the hallways. They could see the shadow form drift along the walls, trying to keep itself 3 steps ahead of the pack. They stayed in hot pursuit, but Luna realized they were getting closer and closer to the castle's front. If Twilight made it all the way to the outdoors, she could fly after the Queen of Shadows and stop this herself. They made it to the huge double doors marking the entrance to the castle, but the guards stopped where they were. The blizzard had returned. The time window where it was calm and clear had come and gone, and the shadowy mists went straight inside that blizzard. "No! You will not get away!" Luna spread her wings and flew right into the hazardous outdoors, but as soon as she was in the thick of it, all she could see was nothing but white around her. She kept moving in the direction she saw the shadow fleeing in, but her wings gave out on her, and she quickly crashed to the ground below. Snow flew everywhere around her as she skidded on the ground, but she came to a complete stop without any further injuries. But it didn't matter if she was fine or not. She had to find Twilight, and fast. But she couldn't see anything. The shadow was nowhere to be seen, and she had no idea where she even was in proximity to the castle. Twilight was gone, and Luna had no idea where she went. "No!" she screamed, her voice blocked by the howling winds of the mountain range. Operation Sunlight. Good version.
Please wake up. You can't be dead yet. You're stronger than that.
No reaction. None.
No, don't leave me like this. We were going to have our own shadow empire.
We were going to have our own child. Raise him up as a prince. She wept over his death, and buried her face into his shoulder joint. The sound of her crying ringed in the halls of the castle. The royal guards, now finished with dispatching Sombra's shadow guard, came over to hear what the commotion was about. To say that seeing Princess Twilight Sparkle crying over one of her deadliest enemies had confused them was an understatement. Celestia looked to Luna, both of them solemn in tone. "I believe his influence over her has finally passed," Luna thought openly. "There's nothing to keep it in check." Are you sure? Celestia questioned. She was deep into his deception.
But I know what you want to happen now.
Yes, I want her to be out of it for good. To have her back to Ponyville. I'll do whatever it takes to snap her out of his influence.
Then go and make it right.
Celestia nodded and slowly approached Twilight by her side, still mourning next to Sombra's body. The purple alicorn cried her heart out over what had happened, staining his fur that was also stained in his blood. The Princess of the Sun touched Twilight's shoulder with a hoof and tried to comfort her.
It will be all right. It's over. We can go back to Canterlot, and I will help you through this. I want to help you get through this, because I love you.
When Twilight's head emerged from out of Sombra's neck, her cheeks were drenched from top to bottom from her tears. All her facial fur was messed up beyond recognition.
If you're going to take me to the chopping block, please make it fast. I don't want to live like this. Not without him.
Oh, Twilight, Celestia said. I'm not going to kill you. I want you to go back to Ponyville. Be the princess you were always supposed to be.
The green light in Twilight's eyes tried to stay intact. It shone brightly as all of those thoughts swirled around in her head.
She's lying,
the voices said.
Don't listen to her. Flee for your life. She'll send you to your grave if you stay. But why is she doing this to me?
Twilight thought.
I'm a criminal. I sided with her enemy, and yet she is giving me the time of day. Why?
She asked Celestia as well.
You say that you love me, but I almost killed your sister, killed 8 of your guards, and just look at her.
She pointed in Luna's direction. Luna still had blood all over her face, though the blood flow was starting to tamper off. Celestia shook her head and wiped the blood from her own wounds.
But I know it was all because of Sombra and not you. The Twilight I know wouldn't act that way.
No! You know she's still lying to you now!
The voices cried out.
But she has to be telling the truth. She has me where she wants me, and she's showing me mercy.
No, she's not!
She screamed as her eyes beamed brighter than ever in that horrible shade of green, and her head was throbbing in pain. Gusts of wind enveloped her, and she levitated off the ground.
You're mine,
said a voice in her head that was distinctively Sombra's.
You married me, loved me, and I loved you back. What more can I ask from you?
Luna's eyes widened, and the guards were prepared to strike at once when they realized what was going on.
His influence is still there,
Luna cried.
Stop him now while you have the chance.
I will.
Celestia's horn charged with a certain kind of spell, and she released it slowly and carefully to her target. It caused the beams of light to go around Twilight's body while she was still in the air. Upon the release of the spell, shadowy mist emitted from Twilight's frame. She cried out as more and more of the mist came out of her, painful to her senses, and almost unbearable in the pain. Then the mist tried to come back with a will of its own.
This is not your queen any longer, Celestia commanded. Your legacy ends here, Sombra, and your empire has no hold.
She strengthened the spell by releasing more magic into the rays of light. They widened with intensity and strength. The mist came out of her again and stayed out, disappearing into the room. Twilight screamed at the top of her lungs.
The pain! The pain! Somebody end it now! End it! End it now!
The green in her eyes faded away, going back to a regular shade of white. She was weakened and considerably tired, and her body lifted down to the ground again. When she landed back on solid ground, her eyes were shut, and she was seemingly dead. She was laying next to Sombra's body, almost confirming Celestia's biggest fear when she started the operation.
In the name of my father, be alive and not dead,
she begged. She ran to Twilight's side and pressed her ear down on her chest. She wanted nothing more than to hear a heartbeat there, just to know she was alive. Then she heard that heartbeat she was looking for, and another one. It was faint and suggested that she was near death, but she could still be rescued at that point. Celestia pulled away, and gave the deepest and most satisfying sigh she would ever give in her lifetime. Everything had worked out perfectly, and Twilight was still alive. Luna walked over to see what had happened, and witnessed Twilight's chest rising up and down with her breaths. She let out the same gratifying sigh, and collapsed to the ground.
Do you think she will be fine when she comes to?
I doubt it,
Celestia admitted.
She loved him and he loved her back. They made love before we could get to her.
So you believe he might have damaged her forever?
But she is alive and Sombra has fallen for good. That's all I could ever ask for. I will make sure the rest is taken care of.
Epilogue Part 1. Saved by the Light. The darkness never once ceased to haunt the air. Everywhere you would look, it was a vast empty darkness. Nothing was there, and there was nothing to be found. It would crush the spirits for most good reasons. You wouldn't want to be there if you could avoid it. Twilight was in the thick of it, not being able to see anything, not even herself. She looked down and she couldn't see her own hooves, let alone her body. She called out for Sombra to come to her aid, but there was no answer. He was gone, and there was no way he would come back. But something else happened shortly after. The darkness took a distinct yellow shade, and her eyes were burning from it. She tried to move away, but it grew brighter in color the more she resisted. That was when she realized she was awake. She opened her eyes and discovered that she was in a completely different room. In comparison to the dark stones that aligned her former castle walls, these were bright and cheerful. Yellow and white shades were everywhere, and the room was twice as large as her chambers. She looked down below her waist, and saw that she was in another bed. The blanket was white, and adorned with a familiar sun symbol. Her head was burning, and she rubbed it with a front hoof, but she stopped when she felt bandages wrapped around her forehead. The sun was burning bright in her room, so she turned to her left. An open door led to a balcony outdoors. That was when it hit her that she was in Canterlot, and immediately recognized the pony that was raising the sun near her resting place. She was in Celestia's castle again, and she woke up right when Celestia was in the middle of her most vital royal duty. Everything from last night hit her, and she was terrified of what was about to happen to her. She hid under the blanket and feigned being asleep, hoping that Celestia did not catch her waking up. She couldn't bear to look her in the eye after what she did last night. Her legs trembled while she hid herself away, and a part of her hoped Sombra was there. A very small part. But it was not meant to be. She watched in horror as the top of her blanket was gripped by a yellow aura. Knowing what was coming, she covered her face with her front hooves. The blanket was being pulled away, and she felt naked for the first time in her life. To her surprise, she wasn't being yelled at or torn to pieces. Rather, when that familiar voice talked to her, it was with the sweetest expression in its tone.
Twilight, please. Don't be afraid to look at me.
That was enough to bring down a fraction of her walls. She finally opened her eyes and faced the truth. Celestia was sitting by her side, free of her royal attire. It was the first time in years when she had seen her teacher like that, and her expression was not of fury or bitterness, but rather that of sorrow and concern. She lowered down and nuzzled Twilight's neck with her muzzle. But this only served to pain Twilight even further. There was no way this could end well, no matter what.
Twilight, I'm so sorry he did all those things to you. That was something I should have stopped before it began. Wait, you're not mad at me? Even though it's all my fault?
Twilight questioned.
What are you talking about? I'm the one who should have stopped him. I could have turned him in before he did anything to me, and I'm the one who killed those guards in the courtyard. I know it was really me. Twilight, please stop blaming yourself,
Celestia said, her shaky voice suggesting that she was on the verge of tears herself.
Even then I knew it was him. He controlled you through dark magic. That was his nature. So, I let him fool me.
She let out a cry so piercing to the heart it pained Celestia to hear it. She wrapped her left wing around Twilight, doing whatever she could to help her at this time. There was no way to get around the pain, only to look at it right in the soul. Eventually, the tears tampered off, yet Twilight was still a shell of herself, and Celestia knew there was more to come. That much was clear with Twilight's expression.
Why do you still trust me with the princess title?
Twilight finally asked.
What do you mean? I should have been smarter about all of this. He almost killed my brother and Cadence, and I still trusted him with my heart. How could I have been so stupid? As much as I understand, you need to stop blaming yourself for what happened. He deceived you better than any pony has done in years. Most ponies have done far worse than you. At least you could be saved when I found you. But I shouldn't have been like that to begin with. Maybe. But even though you almost killed my sister, I'm just happy you're still with us at this point. At least you can improve on this, and you're not with him anymore.
That brought another sharp cry from Twilight's throat, even stronger than the previous one. That was when it was clear how deep his deception had gotten.
I'm so sorry. I didn't know how deeply you loved him with your heart.
That makes it worse,
Twilight yelled.
He was my first love, and I really miss him. But he was lying even when he kissed me, wasn't he? As unwise as this seems, I must tell you the truth. When I confronted him, I was convinced that he truly loved you as well. How long Twilight cried after that? Celestia lost count after 15 minutes. Once more the crying faded away, but Celestia still kept the poor filly under her wing, and Twilight had even held onto it for support a few times. It hurt when any pony held onto her sensitive wing like that, but she could let it pass for this occasion. Time seemed to stand still in that room. Neither pony spoke up, but no more words were needed to express what they were thinking. Any time Twilight tried to hide from Celestia, the Sun Princess would close in the space and either hugged or nuzzled her, reminding her of her mother when she was a foal. She didn't try to push her away. There was no point in resisting her help when it was clear she was a hot mess of herself. The whimpering was almost gone, but she didn't show much more life. She was still and quiet, the quietest she had ever been. By then, it was a couple of hours into the day, and the rest of Canterlot would carry on with the day. There were rumors about what really happened to Princess Twilight Sparkle, but they were only rumors beyond that point for now.
Don't you need to perform your royal duties?
Twilight spoke up. Luna is carrying out most of them for me, at least for today. She's giving me all the time I need to make sure you're okay.
Then what is going to happen to me?
You do what you need to do. I don't want you alone, and I would rather you be in Canterlot with me, but you do exactly what you have to do to get better. I'm not giving you any further duties as princess for at least a month, likely for a while. Nothing that would give you any more problems. Twilight nodded, sighing with relief. Her worst fear, that she would be killed for her actions, were indeed unfounded. She wondered what they did with Sombra's body, since he really did try to bring ruin to Equestria for the second time in his life. They probably threw it away where no pony would find it or recognize it, and perhaps that was for the best. But her heart still felt like it was torn to pieces. She felt stupid for allowing Sombra to deceive her, seduce and even rut her, that a hoofful of guards still died because she couldn't stop Sombra, and that their love was actually real for a day or two. But she was still alive, and there was time to right her wrongs, and sometimes that was all she needed, and a ton of help.
Will I ever get past this?
She thought out loud. Celestia turned to her, a bit surprised but not unexpected. Of course you can. You will have to work fully to recover from it, but it's not impossible as long as you know it was Sombra that did all of this to you, and not entirely by your hoof.
So, are you telling me you don't find me responsible for all of this?
Some of it, but not most of it. The only thing I can say was your fault was when you attacked my sister, but even then I know Sombra put you up to it. In the end, he was aiming to corrupt you, and that Twilight Sparkle I found in his castle was not the same Twilight Sparkle I'm looking at. I can see that as we speak. In the end, you were his victim, not his partner. Thank the stars I came when I did, or else it would have been a different story. More signs of life were returning to Twilight, which was enough to convince Celestia that the recovery had already begun.
So, I just need to be smarter about ponies and figure out if they're lying to me. It will help me avoid traps like this in the future.
Twilight figured out. But you still need to recover mentally from the things he put you through. And I can help. We can all help. Twilight stopped in the middle of her thoughts, and she twitched her ear to the door. She could hear the clopping of hooves in familiar voices.
They're here with us, aren't they?
They were very concerned about you, and to be honest, some of them thought you were killed last night. It was to be expected after everything we've been through.
Can I go see them?
Only if you want to. I asked them to give you some privacy.
Thank you, but I want to see them now if I can. I'm not hurt or anything, am I?
You're physically weaker than usual, and your horn will only be able to do levitation spells for a week, but you're not seriously hurt anymore. Twilight nodded in understanding, and decided to give it a shot. She concentrated on the blanket in front of her, and levitated it neatly to the side. Celestia moved out of the way to give her room. She proceeded to slide out of bed, and dropped down on her hooves to the ground. Her legs were shaky, and she almost fell over once or twice, but she gained her balance in no time. After a few seconds, she was ready to see her friends. She took a deep breath, hoping they would forgive her as easily as her teacher did, and trotted over to the door. The chatter on the other side stopped as she approached the door. Apparently, they could hear her coming. She took one final breath to prepare for the moment, and she swung the door wide open with her magic. Right there, waiting for her at the doorstep, were her 5 best friends. Fluttershy, Rainbow Dash, Applejack, Rarity, and Pinkie Pie. Spike was there as well, along with her parents, her BBBFF shining armor, and her full sitter Cadence. She imagined that they would be sad, mad even, but when she gave them a slight smile, they were the most relieved she had ever seen them in her life, sighing and smiling alike, and she didn't have to say a word to them. Within a few seconds, she found herself in the middle of the biggest group hug ever. Every pony and dragon went up to hug her, just to say that they were thrilled that she was with them again. And sometimes, that is all that needed to be said. As they kept hugging her, that was the moment she truly knew everything was going to be okay. The road to recovery would be long, yes, but at least she knew she wouldn't do it alone. That was the moment she finally saw the magic of friendship at its truest value. And deep down, the only wish she had yet to see fulfilled was that Sombra's influence would leave her forever, that she would move on from that time she spent in his castle. And so far, she was convinced that it would come true. Only that there was one more obstacle to overcome. Just one. Epilogue Part 2, 2 months later. Out in the streets of Ponyville, it was turning out to be a peaceful day. The skies were clear, and would stay that way for the remainder of the week. Being in the middle of the weekend, everyone was taking advantage of the beautiful weather by strolling out in the parks and streets. One young filly, sporting a yellow coat and orange mane, carried around a bouquet of flowers in her mouth. Her jaw could hardly carry the whole thing inside, and she had to stop every now and then to keep it steady. Her father, a slender blue stallion, was following her closely.
"Tell me again why we're going to Princess Twilight's house,"
he asked. The filly dropped the bouquet and caught it with her hooves so she could talk.
Mom says a really bad thing happened to Princess Twilight a few months ago, and she hasn't been feeling well. So I should bring these flowers to the front door, and I worked really hard so they would smell good.
The father bent down to smell the roses, and was delighted at the scent.
"Good job. But I don't think you're the only one who was thinking the same thing."
She turned around to see the princess's front door, and sure enough, a whole shrine of flowers waited at her doorstep. Some even came with sketches of get well cards attached to their stems. She was upset that her idea wasn't that original, and her ears drooped, but her father came to her aid and rubbed her mane gently.
"It's the thought that counts. I'm sure she'll appreciate it."
Encouraged, the filly went ahead with her original plan and picked the bouquet up with her muzzle. She carried it over to the countless other flowers and placed it neatly out in front. She looked up to the second-floor window, curious if the purple princess was feeling any better. Stomach aches were always the worst to go through, young or old. After she prayed that Twilight would get better, she left the doorstep and joined her father to see what else there was to do that day. Everything was quiet for a moment, but a pair of eyes from the front window peered outside. He had to make sure the coast was clear, and no pony else was coming along, thanks Celestia. So the person went to the front door and opened it all the way. Surely enough, the young dragon with those eyes was stunned by the shrine of flowers by the doorstep. He went to work getting each bushel inside, but it took 3 trips to get them all in.
This is insane!
Spike exclaimed, wiping the sweat from his forehead.
This is twice the size of the flowers we got yesterday, and it's only been a week since you were sick. You must have a lot of admirers.
He looked up to the bed upstairs, where Twilight would have been resting, but nobody was there. The blanket was neatly folded, and there was no sign that a pony had even slept in it. Spike panicked, throwing the rest of the flowers onto the living room table, and ran upstairs to see where the princess was. She was gone from his sight, and given how she had been for the week, this wasn't good.
Twilight! Where are you?
As if to answer, he heard something coming from the bathroom, something like a toilet flushing, followed by a sink running water. He took a deep sigh of relief. Looking after your adoptive sister was hard work sometimes. The bathroom door opened with magic, and Twilight came out looking refreshed. She was still a little sweaty, but her face was clear and seemed cheerful to Spike.
Hi, Spike. Are those flowers from the Towns ponies again?
Yeah, you're looking a lot better than you have been all this week.
I feel better. I don't know if that was a stomach virus or what, but it was rough. I'm still going to see the doctor later today, but at least the fever's gone.
Thanks, Celestia. You were worrying me there for a day.
Yeah, so was I. And thanks for looking after me. Now that I think about it, I could use those flowers for lunch.
After a few minutes of preparation, Twilight was in the middle of one of the best sunflower sandwiches she had ever had. Her thoughts had turned to the endless amount of ponies concerned for her well-being the past week, and how the load of flowers had come out of it. A blessing from a curse, one could say. It was a nice escape from the usual round of events, checking on her current royal duties, regardless of if Celestia thought it was too early to do so, and making sure the rest of the elements of harmony were in high spirits. Just seeing more signs of Twilight's recovery had done just that.
After a few minutes of a peaceful lunch, there was a knock on the door. There were a few muffled voices, suggesting that there was more than a hoofful of ponies waiting for her. Her eyes widened as she was reminded of something. She levitated her schedule book over to the table, and flipped it over to the current week.
I almost forgot. I'm supposed to be scouting locations for my castle today. That must be the group of construction ponies I'm supposed to see.
Are you sure you should be doing that today? Spike questioned. You're supposed to be in the hospital this afternoon.
It can wait. I'll get through this meeting first, and then I'll get checked in. I'll make it.
If you say so. That out of the way, Twilight trotted to the front entrance. All those voices hushed again as she opened the door. A team of 6 ponies, 4 stallions and 2 mares, stopped and saluted the princess. She blushed on the spot, still not used to being treated like royalty.
Wow, you were a whole 30 minutes ahead of time, she marveled.
Thank you for considering us for this job. One stallion spoke up. I understand you were very ill, but wanted us to continue on schedule.
It wasn't that bad. I'm pretty sure it's just a stomach virus. So where should we start?
Twilight found herself a fair distance from Ponyville, out in the far meadow that made the land between her 2 hometowns. A river neither shallow nor deep curved the lands here, and Ponyville was just a couple of miles away. It seemed more like an area Fluttershy would call home than a princess would. Not that there was anything wrong with that.
So why did you pick this spot? When we picked this possible location, it was geared more for the future, one of the mares said. It's not in the middle of Ponyville, so you won't have to rearrange the town around it. And since you choose to stay here rather than in Canterlot, we figured the town is set for expansion anyways. This way, the town's expansion can form around your castle in any way it chooses. There will be a lot of different interest in developing around it no matter what. That's interesting. And for now, Ponyville wouldn't be any different for a few years, save for this castle that will be 2 miles south of it, right? That's the concept. I really like the idea. It's planning for a long-term future. I'm just not sure if Ponyville will ever be that big, with or without me. I see. It is your decision in the end, and we do have 3 other options. Then let's look into those.
The party of 6 ponies and 1 alicorn made their way back to Ponyville. There was a dirt path leading directly to town. It would be a few minutes before they all made it there. After all, not all of them were Pegasi. It was early in the afternoon, and it was turning out to be a cool day. But even with the cool breeze whistling around Twilight's neck, she felt like she was on fire. She thought it was her golden sandals that were making it unbearable at first. But then when she took them off and readjusted them, she felt even worse. Her facial fur was drenched in sweat, and she wiped it off so no pony could see that she was under the weather again. Just 3 more trips, and she could see a doctor. Just 3 more. By Celestia, she still had 3 more trips to go. Her stomach felt like it was a volcano inside her body, and her head was spinning. She tried to walk a straight path, only to fall on her flank, and somehow it got worse.
Princess Twilight Sparkle, are you all right? The stallion in charge asked.
No, I'm not all right.
Oh no. The stomach virus was coming back in full force, and she knew mixing sunflowers with ranch was a bad idea. But Spike talked her into it. Never trust a dragon for good eating habits. She felt even more like a volcano, and ran a blush to save her face. She threw up uncontrollably in no time, and her cheeks were flustered red. The party ran to her aid, seeing if there was something they could do, but she kept throwing up again.
Take me to a doctor,
was all she could say, before she passed out cold in the meadow. A few hours later, she was in the middle of a doctor's room, sitting on the bed. She swore that it wasn't so bad that she needed to be hospitalized, just that she needed to know what she had. Spike had been there for a few moments, but she told him to finish the scouting trip for her. She really didn't think that the trip needed to be completed, but she didn't want Spike to worry about her condition, and by pretending to be her nerdy self, it worked. She nudged her front hooves together, hoping that the news wouldn't be all that bad. This went beyond a stomach virus, that was for sure, but she was afraid just how badly it would get. Hopefully, it was nothing that threatened her life, but she didn't have a clue what to expect. This wasn't like most illnesses. Her stomach had calmed down, and the fever wasn't as strong, but the fear of the unknown still played on her psyche. Eventually, a doctor did come in. It was the same doctor that looked over Rainbow Dash when she broke her wing and discovered reading, so it helped that she knew this stallion already.
So, how bad is it?
I need to ask a few questions to be sure. I might have an idea of what it could be, but let's begin. How long have you had these stomach issues?
On and off for a month, but it only got seriously bad this week.
Have you had persistent headaches lasting any longer than a day over the same period?
Sometimes, about 4 times this month.
And have you found yourself either liking or disliking certain foods all of the sudden?
I like sunflowers a lot more, and milk doesn't taste as good as it used to.
The doctor responded with silence. This caused Twilight's fears to skyrocket.
Could this kill me?
No, but I'll still need you to get on your back. I'm going to check your stomach for something. Twilight was confused and more than a little worried over what this meant, but she did as she was told. She got on her back and laid her hind legs straight on the surface. The doctor brought a stool over to the side of the bed and balanced his hind legs on it. He brought his right front hoof up and brought it on Twilight's stomach. As he moved around her belly, she found that it was a lot more sensitive than usual. She felt like laughing, as it felt less like he was massaging it and more like tickling from Pinkie Pie. And how sensitive does this feel?
A lot! Stop it! That really tickles!
She said between laughs. Just as I thought. I know what it is now. Twilight got off her back and sat down on her rump.
So, what is it?
Are you sure you want to know?
I need to know, Doctor.
Princess Twilight Sparkle, all signs point to one thing. You're pregnant. The chariot flew as fast out of Canterlot as it was possible. The 4 guards flapped their wings endlessly, noting that Celestia was more edgy than usual. And that was not a good thing. Bad things happened when she was edgy. Celestia peered her head out of the carriage, ignoring the blast of wind in her face, and looked down to Ponyville. She had to get there as fast as she could, come hell or high water. The town was approaching at high speed, only not fast enough. The town square flew by them in no time, followed by Sweet Apple Acres. Eventually, they came to a large lake outside of town. Only one pony was there that afternoon. A familiar pregnant pony. The wheels touched down before coming to a complete stop. Celestia flew out of her chariot soon after, and she ran to see her prized ex-student. To her surprise, Twilight was quiet out by the lake. She stared at her own reflection, one that carried no expression at all. Celestia ran to her side, and she turned to see the purple alicorn in the eye.
I got your letter, and I had to see you as soon as possible. Is it true? Did they tell you that you were pregnant? Yeah, they didn't leave any doubt about that,
Twilight explained in a monotone voice.
It's Sombra's child, isn't it? I don't know any other pony you had sex with. I know it's his child, too. It's been 2 months since I was his, and they told me I'm 2 months pregnant.
Tears streamed down Celestia's face, and she hugged Twilight with her front legs. Twilight still didn't respond to her actions, and that didn't help matters. She didn't know why Twilight was quiet and still in her embrace, and she cried all the harder for it. King Sombra was even more twisted than she had imagined. This was his final cruelty, forcing Twilight to bear his child, and she had to do anything she could to make this better.
I'm so sorry, Twilight. I regret more than ever that I didn't stop this sooner. You don't deserve this fate, and this is on me. What are you talking about?
Twilight said. Celestia was so surprised, she pulled Twilight out and held her like a foal, and when she did, Twilight had a slight smile to her face.
I'm talking about how he's making you the mother of his child. If I had found out sooner, he wouldn't have had sex with you, and you wouldn't have to go through this hardship.
Twilight grinned from ear to ear, giving her the scariest smile ever.
I love you, Celestia. You're like a second mother to me. Stop talking like that. You're scaring me. But you forgot one thing about this child. And what would that be?
Twilight sat down on her rear limbs, and held her stomach delicately.
This child isn't just his child. It's mine as well.
Celestia stopped in her tracks, and poured her thoughts over those 10 words.
What do you mean? It's my child. His father is dead, but I'm still here. I can raise him up to be my child too. He might be like his father in some ways, but I can still raise him to be like me.
Twilight was starting to cry, but they were tears of joy.
And I won't let him be the tyrant and life-using monster Sombra was. I won't allow it. I can stop Sombra's legacy before it begins.
Celestia listened to every word, and it hit her at last. The pony that had started off as a filly, one that started off accidentally causing a baby dragon to grow into an enormous one, had fully grown up before her eyes. Even after all she'd been through, after all the hell that Sombra had put her through, she was stronger than ever, and it was clear that when the day came that Celestia would finally die, Twilight would continue her legacy, not Sombra's, and that left her more optimistic about the future than she had ever been.
You may never know how fully proud I am of you, Twilight Sparkle. I'm proud of you too. You saved my life back there.
The wind had picked up around Twilight, causing her mane to lift and fly around her head. It was almost like it was flowing in the same manner Celestia and Luna's mane had done. She looked over the lake, where miles of wilderness surrounded it. She could still feel Sombra's love for her, the kiss of the dark that might never go away for good, but she would fight off his legacy as hard as she could. Raising a child by herself would not be so easy, but she could do it. The foal would grow up to be as terrific as a pony as she was. That much she knew. And deep down, knowing her friends would have her back, and her families,
With Celestia and Luna to help out on top of that, she wasn't scared of the future at all. And that was when she knew everything would be alright in the end. And sometimes, that was all the encouragement she needed. She looked into the sky, the expansive blue canvas, as beautiful as it had ever been.
And we are finally done with the story that has been taking place since the end of January. And I can finally go back to one-shots. This was a terrific story. Thank you, the Sir Heartstrings, for recommending it. I'm glad I did it. And just thank all of you. Thank you all for your support, for your patience. You've been really helpful. You've been really understanding, and really, I could not ask for better subscribers. And I really hope you enjoyed this story. I enjoyed this story. I enjoyed reading it, as long as it was. And so yeah. So as great as this story was, I'm glad to finally be done with it, and I'm sure you guys feel the same way. Oh, and there is a sequel for this fic. I will read that at some point, just not for a while. But on to what's next. The next story I'm reading will, in fact, be a clop. I'm going with my usual pattern. So now that the regular fic is out of the way, the next fic will be a clop. And the next one is actually one of my all-time favorites. I will be reading Purely Scientific Interest by Carcinogeneticist. And it is a really, really good clop. I can't wait to read it. And yeah, I'm just so glad to finally be back to doing one-shots. Because that really took a toll out of me. Not gonna lie. Kiss of the Dark was kind of stressful. Not gonna lie. But it was great, and I really hope that you guys enjoyed. And I hope that you guys are looking forward to my next reading. And well, of course you guys are looking forward to my next reading. You guys are subscribed to me. But anyway, so let's see, what else? Oh, I recently did a collab with Dashing Knight. It's not up quite yet because she's been having some technical difficulties with her computer, but her computer is back up and running today, so that'll be out soon. I'll put a link to her channel in the description so that you guys can subscribe to her and keep an eye out for it, and I'll put a link to the collab in the description of my next video. So yeah. Let's see here. What else? Okay, so my 500 subspecial turned 600 subspecial. Okay, so what's going on with that is I know what I'm doing for it. Someone requested this a while back. He or she said that I don't remember who it was off the top of my head, but he or she suggested that I do my little karaoke. And so, I decided, why the hell not? But I'm still working on that project because I need to record the songs and whatnot and all that lovey-dovey happy bullshit. So, and that's taking me longer than I expected it to. That took me longer than I expected it to, or was taking me longer than I expected it to. And so it came down to a choice. Which would you guys rather have? Part 6 finally being out, or a subspecial? And so I figured more of you guys would want Part 6 to finally be out. So I'm gonna have to unfortunately cancel my 500 turn 600 subspecial, um, and just push it back until 800, which, you know. And I apologize to any of you guys that were looking forward to it, but, you know, I have to push it back because, you know, and I am currently working on it, but, you know, it's taking me longer than I expected, and I figured you guys would probably prefer part 6 over a subspecial, you know, because Kiss of the Dark has been delayed so many times now, and, you know, I figured, you know. But anyway, so canceling the 600 subspecial, it's gonna get pushed back. My Little Karaoke is getting pushed back to 800. That way I have more time to work on it, as well as other videos, and anyway, but, so yeah. But thank you guys for your patience and understanding. It really means a lot. Thanks. And I think that's about it. Link to my Patreon is in the description if you guys want to support me there. And so, yeah. Have a great day, every pony. See you next time. As they were still busy recovering from the hottest shower twilight. As they were still busy recovering from the hottest twilight. As they were still busy recovering from the hottest shower that Twilight ever had. He shook the snow. He snuck the snow. He snuck the snow. There it was, with the flags, with the fags featuring. Oh my gosh, no. Oh my gosh. The throne room. The throne room lay. Yeah. The throne. The throne. The throne. Throne room laid. The throne room laid. Why the hell is that so hard to say? The throne room laid. Okay, this is going to get good. This is gonna get very dramatic and very emotional. Oh, this is. Oh, this is gonna be big. This is gonna be big. This is gonna be big. Okay. You foul beast! Oh my god, this is so, no. I can't, this is so awesome. The climax. There was no choice in the matter of him. Oh my gosh.
And when I married her and took her to the marriage bed, I spent all night showing her how much I care for her.
Oh my god. You made love to her? Luna asked. You disgusting animal. Okay, be serious now. Be serious now.
Sombra, it's me.
The Royal Guards now. The Royal Guards now finished with dispatching. Oh my gosh, water. I need water. The Royal Guards now finished with dispatching Sombra's Shadow Guard. The Royal Guards now finished with dispatching Sombra's Shadow Guard. Oh my gosh. To say that seeing Princess Twilight Sparkle crying over one of her deadliest enemies had confused them was an understatement. Oh my gosh. That is a mouthful. Okay. The strengthened... She strengthened... Yeah. She strengthened the spell. Strengthened the spell. She strengthened the spell. She strengthened the spell. Yeah. Twilight stopped in the middle. Ah! Oh, yay! Happy ending, kind of. It's not quite over, but still happy. The feels, man, the feels. Right there, waiting for her at the doorstep, were her 5 best friends. So happy! The feels! The feels! The feels! One young filly was sporting a yellow coat and orange mane. Okay, what am I going to use for this random father guy's voice? I suppose I could use the Tristan voice. Tell me again why we're going to see... Tell me again why we're going to Princess Twilight's house? No. Joey's? Tell me again why we're going to Princess Twilight's house? Oh wait, I have to do the Philly's voice too, so... Okay, I'll do Tristan and Tayla. I'll do Tristan and Taya for their voices. Okay, it's decided. Tell me again why we're going to Princess Twilight's house? He asked. The filly dropped the bouquet and caught it with her hooves so she could talk. Mom says a really bad thing happened to Princess Twilight a few months ago, and she hasn't been feeling well. So I should bring the flowers to the front door, and I worked really hard so that they would smell good. The father bent down to smell the roses, and was delighted at the scent. Good job. But I don't think you were the only one who was thinking the same. Wait, no. I'm starting over. I can't use Tristan and Taya's. I cannot use Tristan and Taya's because I'm using their voices for something else. Crap. Okay. What to do? Tell me again why we're going to... No. Crap. Think. Tell me again why we're going to Princess Twilight's house. No.
Scruff. Tell me again why we're going to Princess Twilight's house. I'm Scruffy, the janitor.
No. Crap.
Crap baskets. Tell me again why we're going to Princess Twilight's house. No. Crap baskets. Mom says a really bad thing happens if...
Okay, I can use the Gohan voice for the little girl, but... I guess I could use Goku and Gohan.
Tell me again why we're going to Princess Twilight's house?
No, it's too high-pitched. No one will believe it's a guy. I suppose I could use Piccolo.
Tell me again why we're going to Princess Twilight's house.
Yeah, that'll work. Alright. Some even came with sketches of get well cards attached to the... Some even came with sketches with... Some even came with sketches of get well cards. Fuck. Eventually, they came to a large cake... large cake. Twilight grinned from ear to ear, giving her the scariest smile ever. Going back to lesson 0, are we? I mean, that's what I'm imagining here. So, yeah.